The Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by Mid-Carolina Service Company.
Mid-Carolina Service Company is the first name to search for your residential or commercial HVAC needs in Lexington and surrounding areas.
Just go holler at Jason and Clint. They'll hook you up on the air conditioners, on the restaurant equipment, refrigerators, refrigeration, ice machine repair. They've been doing this for years. I know them cats forever.
Family owned and operated since 2006, they pride themselves in their quality work and customer relationships. Call 803-356-4153 or visit midcarolinaserviceco.com for a no obligation quote for service today.
The Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by True Brilliance Entertainment.
True Brilliance is a production, promotions, and management company dedicated to connecting artists and producers across the Carolinas to music industry professionals.
Several of their clients have placements both domestic and internationally as a result of their services.
Are you an artist or producer looking to build meaningful relationships within the music industry? Then True Brilliance is for you. Check them out at paramilitary.com. That's spelled P-A-I-R-A military.com.
This episode of the Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by Bob's. Bob's is a Columbia-based retailer of over 100 Black-owned products from 20 Black-owned businesses. Bob's offers a wide range of items from household cleaning, cosmetics, and everything in between. With every visit to Bob's, you support Black-owned businesses, giving them the opportunity to grow and establish connections with our community. Bob's is located inside the Noma warehouse at 2222 Sumter Street in Columbia, South Carolina. Visit their website, weshopbobs.com, for in-store pickup or to find out more. Bob's can also be found via social media on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at weshopbobs. When you stop by, tell them the Hilltop Glove sent you. Bob's brings quality Black brands to the Columbia community. The Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by Red Rooster Sports Bar and Grill. Red Rooster is your neighborhood bar and grill serving the best wings, burgers, and baskets in the Met.
Like the amazing food, the bar is always on tap, and there's plenty of screens to watch the big game. Red Rooster is the Midland's premier meetup spot for local car and bike clubs, fraternities, and sororities.
Staff is dedicated to accommodating all kinds of parties and events. If you're looking to catch a game, have a bite, and a drink, look no further than the Red Rooster.
Red Rooster is located at 7500 Wilson Boulevard, Columbia, South Carolina. For more information, visit redroostersportsbar.com or visit them on Facebook and Instagram at Red Rooster Sports Bar. Go where the winners go.
Welcome to the Hilltop Glove Podcast.
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 Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Hilltop Glove Podcast. Today we have the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Jonathan Jones. Jonathan is a young professional, former student athlete, podcast mentor, author, and 2 times TEDx speaker. He received his Bachelor's of Science in Psychology from the University of Texas at Tyler. Jonathan uses his adversities and life experiences to influence the holistic development of young professionals and emerging leaders. His 3 main pillars of focus are mental health, personal development, and professional development. He believes that addressing these areas is to help each individual prepare for the transitions in their life holistically from one phase of life to the next. Today, Jonathan owns his successful self-named business, Jonathan Jones Speaks. He authors 2 best-selling books and partners with colleges, corporations, and has become a premier education motivational speaker. He helps student athletes succeed beyond their degree with tangible tools for success. His recent book, Get Paid with Podcasting, a blueprint for speakers and coaches on how to start, manage, and monetize their message through products and services, talks all about having a voice that is God-given, which helps as a tool to command our desires. Through the book, he will guide you in your mindset through what's attainable when you decide to let go of the life you have and tap into the life you truly desire by going from podcast to profit. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for the introduction to mine.
No problem. I was doing a lot of research on you. I'm like, oh my gosh, like he has a long discography of things he's been doing, but this is amazing that you're helping student athletes. Like that's your main focus, because that's an area that a lot of people do not tap into. Yeah. So can you tell our listeners and our audience a little bit about your upbringing, your childhood, and what is it like focusing on the podcasting world?
For sure. So in regards to my upbringing, grew up in Baton Rouge, and this is where my parents were together, but my parents divorced at a very young age for me. But in regards to them, one thing they always instilled in my older brother as well as myself was really pushing us and challenging us that if we put the work in, that we really could do whatever we really set our mind to. Because my brother, he was first chair in band. He was in the LSU marching band. And then me, I went the athletic route. Although I wasn't the 5-star athlete or anything like that, but just continuing to hold on to those tangible skills, the working hard, the putting in the practice. And then after all of that, and here we are with the speaking and everything like that. But in college and in high school, I struggled. I struggled with writing, struggled in language arts, struggled in math. I'm just grateful to have held on to those principles. But in addition to that, just to now see the others that can be helped through sharing my challenges, my struggles, and just the level of success I've been able to achieve thus far.
Damn, amazing. What sport did you play?
So I attempted to play baseball and football, but basketball was the sport that I...
Wait, I was waiting to see how you was going to say this. He said, I attempted.
Oh, knows.
Yeah.
That was hard to do. That's a lot.
So baseball, I only made it to like the minor league, which was like the little league base. So I was like right around middle school playing baseball. Football, I tried in middle school. I quit. Then I tried again in high school, which football, it was just too much for me. I didn't have that pent-up aggression to just hit people for no reason. But basketball was more so my sport. So basketball, I played at Richmond Junior College where we won a national championship, and then went on to UT Tyler and finished up. So basketball was my sport.
Yeah, I can relate. Basketball is my thing. That's my niche. I played my whole life. I just like the contact, and then it helped me like release the little bit of anger that I did have in me.
Tamaya and anger.
As a child, you never know you need an outlet.
Especially for teenage angst. And have some way to get that out.
Do you have any influences in your life, or who influenced you as a child? Who helped you, guided you?
So my mother and my father both had their own businesses. My dad and mom started working together in a lawn care business. But then later, my mom, she had her tax business. My dad, he helps authors write books and take those best-selling books and build businesses. So my influence, our most close to chest influence in terms of professional development, in terms of speaking, it would have to be my father, because growing up as a kid, he was an evangelist. We would travel with him, going, speaking at churches, and just seeing him at events and different things like that. So that's really where my first introduction to seeing a powerful orator. And I still tell my dad to this day, I'm like, man, he really impresses me, because he can command a room like nobody's business. So he was one of those first influences when I was really young. And then as I've gotten older, my mom has been really influential, because she does the behind the scenes type stuff, because she helps me in my business in terms of helping me with my taxes, in terms of making sure that I don't get in trouble with the government or the IRS.
That's important.
So them two have been really influential. And then my first business coach after my dad. So I paid my dad $5,000 for my first book to go through the process of writing the book, helping the book become a bestseller, getting it published, all that good stuff. And then after hiring my dad, then I hired Coach Kendall Ficklin, who was my first business coach after him. And Kendall was a guy who walked with ministers, walked with Farrakhan, all these other different people. And he was the one who said, John, if you can't stand up and speak flat-footed and give a presentation, he said, then we got a lot of work to do. So he was super influential in my speaking journey as well.
Let's talk about that term, business coach.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the role of a business coach. And I know people have mentors
and such in their careers. But I think that's a relatively new concept.
Yeah. So one thing that we have to be really aware of, I think now in this age of personal development and technology and everything else, we've heard the term in the past of like mentors or just different things like that. And the term mentor, I feel a lot of times has been associated with somebody who you latch on to, somebody you follow behind and all these other different things. But a business coach or a coach is somebody that you see they've had a level of success, and then you would like to at least obtain some of the success that they've had. So I was introduced to Kendall by one of my old teammates on my basketball team. And after seeing that he was out speaking at schools and seeing that he was speaking to teams, I said, I want to do that. Then I hired him, and then we would have these group calls to where he would bring us in, he would give us a message, and then he would basically break down our business, right? Tell us the things that we need, tell us some areas that we're missing, help us reaching out to schools and different things like that. A business coach is somebody that their message resonates with you, their voice resonates with you, and you see them as somebody that can help get you from point A to point B.
Are they like a strategist almost?
So that's where it becomes like splitting hairs. Okay, so I would say a business coach could also be a strategist. I think a strategist is one person who they've really niched down really deep in one specific area.
Right.
The thing about Kendall was he was coaching on how to do what he has done so far. But I joined Kendall's program so early that he was still building it out. Like he was still determining what he wanted to do, how he wanted to continue to grow and everything like that. But that's a great question. Are they a strategist? I would say some may be, some maybe not.
So what's the difference between a life coach than a business coach?
You said, what's the difference between a life coach and a business coach?
Yeah.
Okay, so y'all really splitting hairs now. Y'all really going deep. Okay,
There's all these things floating around out here. And like all of us know that we can find somebody that will listen to all of our genius ideas and try to jump on them. But a business coach is really the opposite direction. They got their own shit going on. And then they're just listening to you and telling you what they would do if they were in that situation kind of thing. It's what I'm from just a 5-minute conversation about it.
Yeah. So think about this for one. Imagine that you have a coach that's telling you, you need to do this, you should do that, you need to do this, you should do that. But you've never seen them do any of those things.
Right.
Would you want to listen to that person? Big no. Strong no. Okay. But that's where it comes to where you have to vet or you have to date your coaches, because you need to see the fruits of their labor. Just like the word says that a man should be basically judged by their fruit. So on the one end, I'm gonna go back to the life coach question. On the one end, I think a lot of it is just how people determine on how they want to be addressed. Because as a business coach, because I have my own community, and I help other speakers, coaches, consultants do what I've been able to do. But the thing that people don't account for is the life coaching piece comes with it. Because if you're walking with somebody for a month, 2 months, especially if you're walking with somebody for a year, you're going to see them through all 4 seasons. Like, you're going to see people through grief. We're going to see people through success. We're going to see people through struggle. We're going to see relational issues. Like, you're going to see all of somebody, and they're going to see all of you if you want them to or not. Because starting out with anybody, you're going to put your best foot forward. You're going to put on your Sunday's best. But then there's going to be a time where you don't feel like getting on a call. You didn't put no makeup on, or you didn't brush your hair, or whatever it might be. And we're going to see you how we see you. So being a life coach, I think those people's specialty is that they're saying that they're here to help you elevate your life. And they may or may not be focusing on business. But what I focus on, I realized this because I've been coaching I think 2 years now, maybe a little longer than that. But I've had the coaching business 2 years. But I've begun to realize the fact that working with people, the initial business was helping them with the podcast, helping them get their first speaking engagement, helping them create their first course or have their program. Right. That's what my plan was for them, right? And that's the vision I sell to them because that's what they want. However, my vision of a potential client may be higher than their own vision of themselves, which is fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
That's what you want from a coach, right? You want your coach to be saying, yeah, I can see you national. Let's go.
This is true. But where the rubber meets the road or where true opportunity is shown and revealed is where the individual begins to do their digging. And then they're like, I don't know if I feel confident enough to speak. I don't know if I feel confident enough to have a program. Okay, prime example. And I'm going to wrap this point up. But prime example, I have a gentleman. His name is RJ Zimmerman. He's the host of the Untapped Keg podcast. He talks about mental health and sobriety. He joined my program. And this gentleman already had 100 episodes out.
Wow.
In my program,
that whole like how you set up and how you get distribution and all that, he's already there.
He was done with that. RJ did not need me to help him start a podcast. Okay. But if you were to ask RJ, and I'm saying this publicly because he's told me this many times, he said, the biggest thing that you in the Get Paid With podcasting community have helped me with is to grow my confidence. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. This is the biggest part. This is the part for anybody, anywhere. I was talking to my dad about this yesterday. It's the be, do, and have. Okay. At the end of the day, if you never believe that you can become the person that you need to be successful in a business, then you'll never do the work required. And then you'll never have the things of the vision that I was talking about.
Tough.
So we have
have
to be so that we can do, and then that we'll end up having.
Some faith things that I've heard before, because a lot of times when people start on a path, but they have faith that it's going to work out. I'm going to get this house. I've been praying about it. It's going to work out. There's one mentality that like it's just going to pop into your lap. There's this other mentality that you just do absolutely everything you can because you know it's going to work out. And then
you
part of that
ready.
Once you start doing that, once you got the confidence, then you're going to find a way to get the land. You're going to find a way to get the materials. You're going to find a way to get the contractor because you just go for it. You just know it's going to happen.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
And we were just talking about confidence and the other episode that we were recording. And this looks like this is a pivotal thing, this confidence barrier. Being able to find your voice and be, like you said, you put it so well, be who you need to be so you can do the work so that you can then have what you're setting yourself for. And it's all about setting the place. And I know coming from religious aspects, all about setting the house and setting the altar up so that it can be, you can receive the blessings or receive the spirit. Because if you don't do that, then you aren't going to be ready to get it anyway. And I know this leads into this next question about being a student athlete. And because you've done this, done the real work of being a high quality student athlete, you're expected to perform on the field, do your job, whether it be on the field or the court, and do it well. How did you discover your unique voice and how did you gain confidence, since we're on this confidence idea and concept, to tell your story in order to motivate others?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. So just as I'm talking about how important it is to believe and the confidence piece and everything like that, I became comfortable with it through the midst of, I would say, a few different paths, right? The first one was me looking back and just everything I'm telling you all. And it's funny because I'm going through my own story in my head and seeing everything tie together, because I didn't take the time to look under the hood until my manager at a retail store let me know. She was like, dude, your attitude sucks. Your attitude is terrible. You're a cancer at this store. She didn't say it that rough, but she was a straight shooter. Her name was Marlene. And this was when I worked at the True Religion store back when True Religion was popping. But yeah, she called me on my stuff. Okay. Yeah. And then she was the person who was holding the mirror up to me saying, look at yourself. Look how you're influencing people. Look what you're doing. Because she wanted me to understand that I was influenced in that store. Yep. And after she dropped that bomb on me and left me to sit with that, then I had to realize and I had to say to myself that I am really a negative person. Mm-hmm. And I was constantly
How long
complaining.
ago was this? Because like we've been talking for a few minutes now, and I'm pretty quick at picking up negativity because I'm very cynical myself on occasion. And you don't sound negative at all. So what did you do to change this?
Yeah. Listen, y'all, just the stamp told the envelope, stick with me and you'll go places. So look,
Sound like a sales pitch right there.
So look, this was 2013, 2014.
Oh, that ain't that long ago.
Yeah, she called me out. And then after going through that, then the funny thing is she left and went on vacation for 3 days.
That's how I want to go on vacation. Just tell everybody about themselves and then walk out the door.
Yeah, she was like, I'm going. She was like, I'm leaving this with you. You can have it. I don't want it. Goodbye. And the sad part about it was not the sad part, but it was me doing the best professional development exercise anyone can ever do. If somebody is forced to sit with a conflicting belief, and you're gonna go. It's like if you go to therapy. So a
that ain't even professional development, bro. That's just digging.
You necessarily don't want to believe it, but as you're sitting there, you start to unpack certain areas. You're like, oh wow, is this true? Is that true? So after going through that was when I had to come back and I had to let her know I was grateful for the challenge, because in that time when she was on vacation for 3 days, I began to realize how negative I really was. And this was when I started something called the No Complain campaign.
Thank you. I remember that. Yes, No Complain campaign. Go ahead.
So it went back to 2014 is when I put the first post out there. And the focus of it was just to help people. The focus of it was to really help me. It was saying, I want to focus on everything that I have versus complaining about the things that I don't. Yep. And it came from me sharing that story. So it was just posting. I'm posting static images on it wasn't Instagram, and it was Twitter. Just posting these images in Facebook and just telling these stories. And then I wrote my first book, which was going to be named the No Complain Campaign. But I changed it to process because anybody who's negative won't want to buy a book about negativity. Let's be real.
Yeah, good point. Great point.
That's not going.
That's not going. That shit.
Yeah. I don't want to hear you tell me about
fly off the
myself.
shelves. Okay, let's be honest. Nobody wants that for a stocking stuffer. Okay.
Nope.
So
quit being an ass, cousin Jimmy.
So then that was, if you look inside my book, it says process presented by the No Complain Campaign. So wrote that book. Then after that was when I started getting to the point to where I got connected with Coach Kendall Ficklin, and then working with him, and we would go through these exercises where he would say, I'm going to give you all 60 seconds. And in 60 seconds, I'm going to give you this word, and I want you to give me a principle, and I want you to tell me a story and wrap it around this word in 60 seconds. Yeah.
Because that was going to be my next little dive, was like, what does this coaching actually look like? Because it's not just, you can do this, focus on the goal. That you're actually doing activities that are making you quicker on your feet. And I would assume preparing you to give elevator speeches and pitch your product in a odd situation.
Yeah. So Kendall's style, or Coach K as he goes by, his style is more of a baptism by fire type deal, because you would get the first. So you would get the first speaking engagement, and he'd be like, okay, that's good. Now go get 3 more.
Oh, wow.
And that was how he moved. He wasn't somebody who would give you the bone and connect you with people. No, he would tell you, you go get this, go get that. And then when he started doing his events, he would give us the opportunity to speak at his events. But this is when I would have, but his events were starting up because, like I said, he was starting his business. Because he was a barber for 20 plus years. So he was always coaching from behind the chair.
Yeah, he's a business coach right there.
That's true. Yeah. And then it got to the point to where, at his events, he would let us speak. And then he would always tell us, keep books on us, always be ready to sell your book. So I'm like, okay, cool, coach. So you're going to let me speak so I can sell my books? He was like, no, this is my show. He was
looking at my game.
This is my show. That's really where the confidence came from. Because imagine having a friend because my friend, his name was Bruce, he would come to my house 6 o'clock in the morning, and we would go through flashcards. We would go through flashcards for about an hour, minute flashcards. We would go through, boom, story, principle, and we would always record them so we can make sure that we're getting better and improving. So imagine doing that 3 days out the week for a little bit of time. Yeah. Then imagine a couple of other days we hop in, we're emailing, cold calling people, trying to find speaking engagements. So after you do reps like that, you begin to build a different level of confidence. because you know what you're bringing, you know what you're offering, and you know who you can ultimately serve and support.
And specifically what you're training for is like being quick on your feet.
Yeah.
Verbally. Is that correct?
Most definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
most definitely.
Yeah, because a lot of this stuff seems very nebulous when you start thinking about it. There's the idea of your business, then there's how you present it, and there's how you manage it, and how you fund it, and all of that. And each step along the way, you're acquiring different skills, or you're bringing on somebody else to manage that for you. But I think like the real magic sauce, like that's not common knowledge. We know that if you want to get stronger arms and chest, you do push-ups, pull-ups. You know what I'm saying? That's common knowledge, but we don't know the individual daily tasks that you wake up to do if you want to be a better entrepreneur. A lot of times it's just pitched at us that we got to have better contacts, we got to have better networks, we got to know the right people. But this is literally like your training so that when you actually do get in those spaces, you can speak to these people and they don't look at you like you some kind of weird idealist hippie kind of thing.
Exactly.
That's my case. Yeah.
And I like how you put it, because our audience, they need to hear this type of concept and idea of how it's done, because again, they don't realize there are certain mundane aspects that you have to do. And then especially you coming from a student athlete perspective or an athlete perspective in the first place, I like how you said reps. Like you're doing these reps. Right. These reps are to build up certain areas. 6 a.m. I'm doing exactly. Reps. Yeah, like Kobe, like he is in the gym at 4:30 in the morning, getting ready for that 6 o'clock game in the afternoon, like in the evening. And to be able to prepare yourself for that, I like that you said that, because you're going to go into a situation, whether it be a speaking engagement, whether or not you're selling a product, or if you're just getting prepared to go and do something at work, you're going to have a high level of confidence now. You shot the ball many times. Yeah. You're not going to sweat or become nervous in that circumstance because you've prepared yourself mentally and physically. Do you agree with that?
Oh, most definitely. And here's the kicker. Okay, here's the kicker. When we all have the dream, right? We go to sleep, we have the dream. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be a world-renowned speaker. I want to be whatever, fill in the blank. When we have the dream is seamless and the dream is perfect. You go up on the stage, everybody's yelling, people buying your products, like all this stuff is happening. You say, "Can I get a yeah?" Everybody says, "Yeah." But in real life and in real time, right? Because I'm telling somebody, if everybody says, "I want to speak," I can say, "Yeah, go find a place to speak." But at the end of the day, there's some other pieces that we're not accounting for. Because the dream, everything is together. The puzzle pieces are all together. Real life, the opportunity that you get, you go door to a school and then you're like, "I would love to speak." And I'd love to speak in a couple of weeks. And they say, "Oh, we're actually having a small event today. Would you like to speak?" Like that. That's how it happens. You don't have the USB. You don't have the PowerPoint. You don't have the microphone. You're going to go into a gym. They're going to have 200 kids. The 200 kids are going to be talking, screaming, yelling. Everything is going to be happening that you did not imagine. So if you don't do the reps and you don't do this work that you haven't thought of, then you're not going to be successful. Because have there been times where I've gotten the opportunity to speak and I didn't have a presentation prepared? Yes. But this is when you lean into the reps, because you start to think about, "Oh man, I told this story about when I tried to play baseball and I couldn't even hit the ball. I just hit the tee." You tell these stories and you talk about what you were able to extract from that life lesson. And that brings us to where we are. We just have to realize that the dream versus reality, there's a very significant difference.
Yeah, you definitely use your words wisely. But how do you, when you're speaking to those kids, how do you relate to them? Or sometimes when you're talking and you have a quivering in your voice, how do you overcome that? Is that still the reps and you just learning trial and error?
The honest answer is really reps. It's reps. But in addition to that, because I don't want somebody to be like, "Oh, he's just saying reps." But in addition to that, right, I don't want nobody to tell me.
But you get thrown for a loop twice a week. You're going to figure out how to recover from it.
You just said what it sounds like, though. But it almost sounds like what a stand-up comedian has to go through,
or any kind of performer.
Yeah, but specifically a stand-up comedian, because they have to talk and keep the audience
engaged.
Teach them, engage them, teach them something. Because that's usually what good comedians do.
Modify.
Play off of them and modify. That is difficult as all get out. Right. That's one of the toughest things you can do. So kudos to you. Yeah, I see what you're saying. You got to get reps. And that's what they always talk about. Comedians, they always talk about getting reps and being able to go up there like cold and make the audience fall in love with you and warm up.
Yeah. So you have to get the reps in. But then if we go a little bit deeper down, you have to do enough reps to where what story will resonate with what specific audience.
Yeah.
Because I can't give you all a message. Okay, so I'll just rewind the clock back to Clemson. When I spoke at the Clemson event, the Men of Color event, in the room, I prepared the message for students. But as I'm looking around the room, I see grown adults.
Right.
Okay? So you have to begin to think, how can I pull on all of these things? Because there's a message that's going to lend. If I talk about struggle and hard work and doing things a certain way before we had dial-up, that's for my adults. Right? But then if I go over here and then we start talking about
it, they're going to look at you all.
And technology. Exactly. So you have to know what's going to resonate, but then also you have to make sure that you never tell a story without giving a point, and you never give a point without telling a story. Because just like you all were saying, you cannot engage somebody if you don't hit on the heartstrings, right? You have to hit on the heartstrings a certain way. Like you have to talk about a challenge that you had that else in that room is going to resonate with. I'm talking to a Black audience. We can talk about.
This portion of the podcast is brought to you by Lynx Recording Studio.
Lynx is a premier audio and video recording studio in the greater Charleston area with 4 completely different booths, multiple peripherals, and 4 producers. They have the ability to service all facets of audio and video creativity.
If you need to record a song, a podcast, create a demo, or even take headshots and complete drops for Hollywood film, they've done it.
Call them at 843-879-9386 or find them online at lynxrecordingstudios.com. That's Lynx, Lynx, recordingstudios.com.
You have to work a little bit harder sometimes in certain areas to get certain things, because that's just the way it is. That's just the way it goes. That's the way the world works. It's just taking certain things into account and then making sure that even geographically, where you're speaking, right? It's putting all those things together, dropping it in a pot, and I guess you can call it like a little gumbo speech.
So when you're doing this, when you're modifying these things on the fly, is this just because you've trained on it and you have this kind of like intuitive sense that you can draw on? Are you changing the play on the field, or do you have like a set of like modular units that you can swap out in these presentations? Does that make any sense?
That makes perfect sense. I just pictured Peyton Manning as you're explaining that.
Oklahoma.
We're not doing this presentation.
Yeah. So there have been a few times to where I started doing a presentation and then I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do this one. There have been few times where I put together a slide and I was like, I put together the PowerPoint and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do this. To answer your question, typically, the way I practice, I go through the presentation. So I talked about earlier about the vision and reality. So when I practice as if I'm calling on people to engage them, and I answer for the people. As weird as it sounds, but
that's how you gotta do it.
Yeah, but in real time, like LeBron and all the greats say, the game slows down. It's so funny how slow the speech is going when I've practiced it and I called on imaginary people and I get them to chime in. So for me, it's to the point now to where I know that if I say certain things that I'll get people to raise their hand or I'll get people to engage. And then based on that, and I'll ask them, have you ever been in this situation before? Have you ever faced a tough situation? Raise your hand. Everybody gonna raise their hand, of course. And then the ones that don't, I say, okay, if some of y'all are lying, then I get to laugh. So it's just zigging and zagging, going with that. But then also every once in a while, I know with adults or adult learners, I realize that you have to bring their defenses down before they'll even see you as anybody I can potentially take something from, especially if you're younger, So I like to pull on them in the audience. Hey, sir, what do you think about this? Because if I allow you to add value to this presentation, then now you're going to be locked in. And now the guard has been lowered. So those are just a few strategies. Of course, there's way more, and I know there's still a lot more I have to learn when it comes to speaking. But on my journey of 7 years at this point, this is just some of the tactics and skills that I've learned and just utilized.
Man, I have a quick question to build off what we're saying before we move on to the next point. And I know in the era that we're in, with specifically with student athletes, they now have an ability to gain monetary products or monies, just to be straight cold hard cash, from their name, image, and likeness deal that is now out here. You have athletes out here now who are going to be in marketing. They're going to be allowed to go and speak for themselves in order to monetize themselves.
Does that mean we get NCAA games again?
Yeah, we are. They're supposed to be out next year. My fault. I knew that. I'm on that.
I ain't been following none of this, but okay. We get college football games again.
Yeah, college football's going to be back. Notre Dame may not join, but college football coming back. So would you explain to our audience, especially those who are listening, who may be younger, who may be in the student athlete world, or who may want to use the new name, image, and likeness as a way to bolster platform, probably gain some earnings or et cetera while they do it? Because I think this is a perfect time right now where we're at with technology, et cetera, for people to be able to make their own streams of income from using their own voice. But could you explain why it's so important for athletes, specifically student athletes? Because I know older professional athletes, they do this. Speak for themselves and create brands for themselves. Because this is a new thing where now they're tied to a number, and they have these numbers. You can see how much an athlete is worth and how much it's based on them actually building their brand. They already analyze this stuff.
Wait, I'm sorry. What? They have a value based on a human being?
Yes.
Based on their social
values.
Reach?
Yeah, it's real now. It's here. It is actually here.
And we're talking about kids that are like 19, 20 years old.
Yeah, 19, 20 years old. They'll have
we're going to prom last year.
$500,000, $1.3 million on their name, image, and likeness deals based on their social reach and their ability to build a brand, and they don't know how to speak. That's crazy. Yeah. Would you be able to lend some of your wisdom to that? How important you think it is, and strategies that these student athletes could use to help build their brands?
Yeah. So one, name, image, and likeness, I'm an advocate for it. At the same time, I think that this is also, that this has the potential to be a gift and a curse. So
yes,
I'm going to move on.
Capitalism.
It has the potential to be a gift and a curse. One, I personally never like when we put values on people, like monetary value. It rubs me the wrong way when I go on a site and I can scroll down and see how much you're worth, valuation of a person. And then I go on another site and I can see, okay, I give you $300 and you'll do this for me or that for me. I don't like that. I advocate for the student athlete to be paid. Okay, so let's go in deeper. If leveraged correctly, and when I say if leveraged correctly, there are some companies that are doing great things out here. They're helping student athletes handle the money with taxes and get set up with LLCs. If leveraged correctly, wonderful. But at the same time, our student athletes still need a level of financial education, because if you give a student athlete $100,000 and they're a freshman in the world, how can you, in what world can you expect that to have a positive outcome?
And by the way, there's some things you can't do with it. You got to follow some rules.
True.
There's a few guidelines.
And that's the part where I don't want to go too deep, because it gets sticky, because some of them, they can take certain deals. Some of them they can't, because it'll affect the money that they would get from financial aid and all this other stuff. There's, of course, it's going to take some years for them really iron everything out. However, if leveraged correctly, and if I want one student athlete to take the stance of, I appreciate these brands offering me these contracts for me to sign under them, but I want a student athlete to say, I would love for you to sign under my platform, i.e., shout out to my guy, Justin Stuckley. He's track and field at the University of Auburn, and he gets it. Okay. He's a guy that gets it. He's had sponsors on his podcast. In addition to that, he's been interviewing the biggest coaches at Auburn. He gets it.
He knows his value outside of the field itself. In the community.
Because here's the thing that we have to accept. If you sign a contract with an outside entity, right, the deal is going to be bigger because they have stipulations, right? But if an outside entity signs to advertise with you or signs to work with you, then you're going to have more control. And one thing that our people, and I'm saying for Black and Brown, the Black and Brown community, we failed to maintain control because the whole shiny object syndrome always loses us. We get lost in the rims. We get lost in the chain. Even now, every here and there, I'm like, man, I wouldn't mind getting a nice little chain, but I don't need a chain. A chain isn't going to set me up for 4 years, 40 years down the line. Getting the long-term play to where ultimately with the long-term play, this will set us up to where they can be successful far beyond the 4 years. You give a kid $100,000, it's gone before they even graduate. Let's be real.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I went long on this, but I advocate for ownership and I advocate for student athletes having podcasts because when they have the podcast, they become the face. They become not a brand ambassador, but they become brand partners with people. When we structure these contracts and set these contracts up the right way, now they're not only going to be winning this year, next year, and the following year, but they'll have those deals like a variation of the Allen Iverson deal to when he turns 50, he'll get another check, or the Bobby Bonilla deal. He every year for so many years, he's continuing to get millions directly deposited into his account. We need to have these conversations so that they can be set up for these type deals so that so their family can be good off of their athletic prowess versus them just being good. And then after the 4 years, then we're just rolling dice.
Right. Yeah. So it's like leveraging long-term. Right.
Most definitely.
We're talking about multi-million-dollar NBA contracts here. We're talking about people who are in college. Yeah. But if you're playing on a certain level, I was just thinking about this the other day if you're a student athlete nowadays and you become a social media influencer, you're making money off of your athleticism because that's why everybody knows you.
Yeah.
But now, and I think that's why they had to start making some of these changes is because the gray area between why you're famous and how you're famous gets so funky.
Is it merit or popularity?
Popularity mostly.
You see what I'm saying? Because you're still supposed to perform. And this is what makes it weird for student athletes. If you come in as a 5-star recruit and you build a good brand and you start monetizing off of it, but your play level drops or becomes subpar, you're going to start losing money on one end, quote unquote. But technically, if you can keep your popularity up, like a Baker Mayfield, you go. Like a Baker Mayfield, you can still exist. So it's interesting, and it leads directly into our next question.
Yeah.
Why should everyone have a podcast? And this is one thing we always think about. And it's interesting, especially for somebody like yourself, Mr. Jones, with what you deal with. I know my elder brother and I, we talked about this since the beginning of the COVID-19 podcast. They've been the forefront of diversifying topics of every type, having controversial conversations, sharing knowledge with people that you don't normally get to be in a room with. First of all, how did you tap into this world? And because I know you do speeches and et cetera, and especially motivational. And when did you realize how to leverage this platform? Because I know that's what we're discussing right now for student athletes, we're leveraging their brand. But when did you tap into podcasting? How did you realize how to leverage this? And why is it important to you?
For me, I would say that I had like a rebirth of podcasting because I would love to say that I started my podcast and understood what I was doing, everything like that, which was right around 2016, which was not the case. I did about 275 episodes and then I realized that I was podcasting wrong. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So 275 episodes and I was podcasting wrong because I didn't have a coach and I didn't have clear direction of the power of a podcast and how to leverage the podcast. But after I invested in some coaching, I had it was like 2 or 3 podcasting programs. I went to a podcasting conference, like all this stuff. And then I came back. I put that podcast down because I was burnt out because I wasn't seeing any money whatsoever. And I believe in the holistic frame of monetization. So that's driving people to your podcast, which could lead to a speaking engagement or could lead to book sales. So that's what I believe in when it comes to podcast monetization. But at the beginning of the pandemic, when I had a few speeches booked and the lady paid me to check ahead of time, Then I got an email to where she said, John, we gave you the check, but we're going to need that check back.
Shit.
Yeah. The check went on bills and everything. I'm like, how am I supposed to give you this back if I don't even have it to give? So at that point, I had to figure out something quick. And then I said, I want to start speaking to student athletes because they're shutting down events on campus. But I was looking around and I'm like, but student athletes are going to be there. They're still going
to go home.
Like they still got stuff going. They had student athletes in the bubble still.
That's a university asset.
Yeah. They was
People
like,
don't know
nah.
that.
Because one of the schools I was reaching out to, because I was reaching out to schools, but first I started a podcast called Beyond the Ball. And this was focusing on helping student athletes succeed beyond their degree. And then after putting out so many episodes, then I had a friend connect me with his girlfriend who was like, John, you can speak to our athletes. They're virtual. And this allowed me to get in a rep. So spoke to TC.
Hey.
Then after that, then I was telling them what I was doing with the podcast. Then I got to speak to the University of Arkansas. Because why? We're all virtual. They didn't have to do anything. They just had to put me on the engagement, right? So that happened. But after getting to that point, I was like, I need to make this really shake. And then Dr. Russell, who was with Vanderbilt University, she said, Jonathan, what do you speak about? And me and her were supposed to connect for months. Like she was going through chemotherapy and everything like that. And she was like, Jonathan, I'll get to you in a couple of months. She didn't know me from a can of paint. And then we had a conversation. And then she was like, I see what you're doing with the podcast, but what do you typically talk about? And I told her mental health. I told her student athlete transition. And from that point, then she gave me an opportunity because she said the coach was focusing on mental health. So we'd love to see you do an engagement. And I thank God for Dr. Russell because that opened up the gate for me in seeing the power of what a podcast can leverage. So now I'm bringing it full circle. Why do I want student athletes to leverage the power of a podcast? Yeah. Student athletes are in the unique position that nobody in the country is in. Why is that, John? Because student athletes, if I was a current student athlete and I recorded a podcast episode and then I knew that I had a game the following night, I can post the link to the episode. I can pin it to the top of my Twitter page. And then let's say I'm a football player and I go viral because of a catch that I did in the game. Right. Now my page is going to boom. And just by default, more people are going to take notice to what I'm doing. Or even if they don't right away, eventually they will by way of them following me. Student athletes have an already embedded population because we're going to a game. You're going to be on a plane. You're going to be on a bus. You're going to be on a train, whatever, a ship, going to a location to where you can grab your friends' phones and have them subscribe to your podcast. You have access to a group of people and a population of people on a daily basis. And I'm going to walk through this equation really quick, and then I'm going to be done.
Hijacking the national media. You're using ESPN to promote your shit.
So there's that. But if we start and develop a solid enough following at our university, it reflects well on the university to highlight the student because the student is doing what they're going to college to do. They're going to college to figure out what's next in life. But a podcast
you're an influencer.
is going to, you're going to influence people to purchase things, but then you also can push out whatever message is on your heart that you have to give to the people. And then further than that, y'all, here it is. Man, I've been saying this time and time again. A student athlete starts a podcast. Student athlete needs some money. I'm also coming back to control. The student athlete now is in the position to where, let's say they do a limited print of T-shirts. They print 20 T-shirts, $20 a shirt, quick $400, depending on how good they can convey a message for the show. And then repeat the process. Now you have people walking around campus advertising for your show, ship on steroids. Repeat the process. It just makes sense, man. Right. It just makes sense for me. I get so fired up. It just makes sense.
No, it does. It really does. And the idea that there have been barriers to where, like when I was in school, if you had done that, like if I had started a podcast and started selling T-shirts and I was a student athlete, like I would have lost my eligibility.
Yeah, you've
Like
been
that,
kicked. Yeah.
and that's not gambling on a game. That's not throwing a game. That's not getting paid by a university to show up when you normally wouldn't. That's literally taking entrepreneurship away from people.
That's like selling lemonade at a lemonade stand. They tell you to do it because you're a student athlete. It's really, come on. But now that ball's back in your court and you can now utilize that. So why wouldn't you?
Because this has been a very controversial thing because we know anytime they change any kind of law, they're just going to try to screw over somebody that know any better. Like we know that.
They're going to try to take advantage. Yeah.
The universities ain't going to get screwed in this deal. That ain't happening.
They can make their money. But I like the point that he's making and you're harping on it.
The younger generation got to be creative. And
yeah, they do.
They got to use each platform differently. So many different ways they can make money.
Yeah. And you don't realize it, but you put it so succinctly. Yeah. If you don't do that, you'd be remiss to miss that opportunity.
Yeah. And then here's the other piece. Because our kids are seeing it, the influencers, of course, over the years, athletes, entertainers, everybody is doing all. But if we pay attention to where the shift is really going, it is a happy marriage between sports and between media, and it always has been. Richard Sherman has a podcast. Kevin Durant has a podcast. LeBron James has a collective of podcasts. It's not anything. It's not anything happening on accident. And with student athletes, they want to go and let's create content. But why go through the whole process of creating individual pieces of content when you can create a podcast and cut clips? You can sit there for an hour and you can record a podcast if you did it for an hour. Or you can just say, okay, this is an hour. Let me cut this into 3 different episodes. Okay, let me cut this into 30 different 1-minute clips.
You got IG posts for the next 2 weeks.
Easy. But
that's
it just, you know,
they do it on YouTube. They do it on YouTube all the time.
That's what I'm saying. They sitting there watching YouTube, and a lot of them are uploading stuff on YouTube. And YouTube, I'm an advocate for YouTube, but at the same time, YouTube is also banned in certain countries. And YouTube is great, but this is controversial. But I'm not somebody who believes just because you put it on YouTube, it makes it a podcast. Other people believe different. You need to have that thing on Apple. You need to have that thing on Spotify. It's no coincidence that Spotify has paid multiple people hundreds of millions of dollars to have podcast deals. It's not a coincidence. The audio counts for something too, as well as the video.
And that's what the young people don't understand. They think it's all about video. And it's like, no,
addicted to the video.
Audio is as much important as video.
But that's always what we do is like when we're at whatever stage of life we are, especially the younger we are, like we think that's where it is. You know what I'm saying? So if all you're doing is watching video on Insta or TikTok, then you assume
that must be the life.
But that's it. It's only video on TikTok. That's the only place you can do this. But at the same time, you have this like plethora of millennials that are waiting in line at the car rider pickup that's got to get kids from school. And you know what?
I'm listening to a podcast.
I can't be trapping in the pickup line. That ain't that dude. I'm
going to leverage every single free resource.
Yeah. And that's why I think you're bringing up to us today. Like, you don't think about what you have until, you may need somebody to come help you make an assessment of it, analyze the situation. That's where the business coach comes in, making sure that you're taking that time to create your training schedule and get your reps in so you can be prepared. And then at the same time, you're also making sure that you're leveraging what you do have to keep and hold ownership. Because you keep saying that, Mr. Jones, I'm paying attention to that part. You are not playing about that ownership part. And I think that's important for our audience to hear, because a lot of our audience, they are folks who work in roles where they do need to make sure that they're taking full advantage of ownership and ownership opportunities and potential to make sure that they monetize what they do and how they do it.
And not just the ownership of the monies afterwards, but ownership of the ideas. Because you can have complete ownership of the money afterwards, but if it's somebody else's ideas and you just a mouthpiece, you're going to look back on that and not be happy.
Yeah.
Isn't that why he said they should sign under you?
Exactly.
That's the point.
That's a different strategy.
I'm the creative. Like, I should be getting all the benefits.
Yeah. Never heard anybody put it that way.
Exactly. Because ownership, for one, I believe, because my dad's also an attorney, I believe it goes that ownership, I believe, is 9/10 of the law. I believe that's how it goes.
Yes, it's the rumor.
So it's the rumor.
Who's the owner?
Sadly, sadly. It depends on what your representation look like. But we need to teach and instill ownership. We do not want to be the borrower. We want to be the lender.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
Period. Because if not, okay, because here it is. If we, and I'm going Kanye on this just because.
Go ahead, Kanye.
But like the whole Kanye and Adidas thing, right?
Yeah.
They're saying that they still own the designs that Kanye created.
Yeah.
Which means they
Did he really make it though?
They can't though?
I said, did he really make it though? Did he?
In conjunction with other creatives, he did.
Oh, yes.
Just like he does his music.
I figured he paid somebody who actually knew how to make shoes.
But at the same time, you can't be mad at him for that because at least he's paying. There's people out here.
That's what he does. Yeah.
There's people out here, shout out to Disney, allegedly, who stole Lion King.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just one of those things. But this is why we need ownership. This is why the Bible tells us our people perish for lack of their knowledge, because if we don't have ownership and then we don't have the intellect to know that we need an LC, we need a trademark, we need representation, then we're going to continue to be in the same cycle and we're going to continue to be the same player of a bigger game. We can be the owner of the game. We have to shift. We have to shift our thought.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of folks who invest their monies like that they receive from doing these things and I'll say trivial pursuits, such as just shiny rims and the gold chains or the nice shoes. Spend your money on a business coach. Get somebody who's going to help you make sure that you're planning properly to reap all of the benefits of your energies and what you put in. I think, dang, that's a strong point. And I want our audience to understand that, because we always are asked, okay, so what steps do I take? How do I take these steps? And if I'm looking for a blueprint to help guide me, what are a few pointers and et cetera that I can do that'll help ensure that I'm at least in the right wheelhouse when I'm making decisions? And I think from what we've been talking about today, I'm not going to lie, those business coaches, they sound like a good thing. They sound like a great thing. And sometimes you may have to do it online. You may have to get a book or whatever it is to get that information and start moving in that path. But I think for a lot of folks out here who are looking to do podcasting or looking to create and build a brand for themselves, that's something they may want to pick up on. Because I know we were never told that growing up, ever.
Can you talk about like why you should brand yourself, your name first? That's the first thing you should start off with.
Your name is not going to change unless you decide to change it. But
it does.
The thing about branding your name is the branding is going to follow you wherever you go, i.e. Kevin Hart, right?
Yeah.
He's branded, and then he comes with Heartbeat Productions and some of the other things that he's done. But wherever he puts his name brings that value. So I like to believe in branding yourself first, because at the end of the day, you are your first product. Right. If you're somebody who doesn't have any product, any book, any program, any course, anything like that, then people are going to pay for your time if they deem it value enough. By taking the steps to brand yourself, this is going to elevate your authority and ultimately going to maximize your brand. And then whatever you began to put your name behind or into following that, it's going to transfer that value with it.
Dope. Yep. Dope. Good information. Good information. Mr. Jones, you have made it through our gauntlet today. I appreciate you being patient with us and going over these questions that we had and dropping a lot of wisdom, just solid information and strategies that people should look to be taking as they move forward with their journey as entrepreneurs, podcasters, or just people looking to have a good business experience, man. Especially in our community, is something that in being our community, I'm talking about the normal person community. It ain't a race thing, but just the normal community of regular folks out here. We don't get to hear this stuff all the time. It's stuff that I think, especially nowadays with the change that we experienced over the past 2 years, a lot of folks, and I know this is a big thing, a lot of folks are not going back to normal 9-to-5s. They are not going back to previous jobs. They're running their own businesses. They're creating their own brands. They're finding ways to get out here and touch communities and et cetera in a way that makes them happy and also gives them a livelihood. And I just know as a student athlete, especially as a former student athlete, and thinking about athletes nowadays and their abilities and the options, or I say options or access to points of influence that they have and their lack of using it, I think this is something that a lot of them would like to hear or need to hear. And a lot of athletes are waking up too. They're starting to pay attention to this and their effect. And that's, like you said, the reason why you're seeing so many podcasts by well-known athletes and folks that we know out here who are giving us their experience and their wisdom that they picked up. And I think it's vitally important for us as a whole. But because you made it through the gauntlet, it is now shameless promotion time.
Ooh.
So I do want you...
What you got coming up?
Anything you got coming up, especially your social media handles, if you could give that to our audience so they can figure out how to get in contact with you, purchase your book, find out what kind of speaking engagements you got coming up.
Certainly. I appreciate you all taking the time to have me on the show. Glad to be here to hang out and slide through the gauntlet. But in terms of promotion, so I'm Jonathan Jones Speaks on everything, except for Twitter is Jonathan J Speaks, because they didn't want me to have my full name, I guess. But in terms of things coming up, so I have a training coming up geared towards speakers, coaches, and consultants, people who are looking to start a podcast, want to learn how to leverage a podcast, just like what we talked about today. You can go to www.getpaidwithpodcasting.com. You can sign up for the training there. And I would just encourage people to subscribe to my channel on YouTube. You can type in Your Podcast Mentor and I'll pop up on YouTube. And that's the same title of my podcast show on all audio platforms, Your Podcast Mentor Show with Jonathan Jones. But if people are looking and interested in starting a podcast, then that's where I should say they should go. But thank you all for the opportunity and for the time just to share.
Excellent. Do y'all have anything else to add today? Any other questions for Mr. Jones before we sign off?
We didn't get to talk about the TEDx talk, but that's okay.
Yeah.
They'll watch it. They can tune in.
Y'all Google it. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, they can get the experience. But thank you for the great conversation.
Most definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Appreciate the work you're doing out there. Everybody needs to, I think we're at a time right now where there's the possibility for a lot of people to take ownership over their own pathway.
Creations.
Yeah. Their own financial situation. Say that, and it sounds like I'm talking about 401ks and stuff, but really what we want to be able to do is live our life on a daily basis, doing the things that we value, not luxury and relaxation necessarily, but we want to do the good stuff and not just have our life completely determined by
stress,
accomplishing somebody else's goals. That's what a job is somebody else has a goal that's too big for them to do, so they paying you and you are giving up substantial portions of your life and family and stress, livelihood, and mental energy. And we all trying to liberate that. So the work you're doing is helping people do that. So
it's liberating work.
Yeah, on a very human level, we appreciate that and support what you're doing.
I appreciate you all. Thank you so much.
Certainly. So this is DJ and what? With Tamaya.
Hey, y'all.
Mike.
Yep. Still here.
Hey, and our esteemed guest, Mr. Jonathan Jones Speaks. We appreciate you joining us today. We want our audience to continue to tune in and follow Mr. Jones and whatever he's doing. Also, make sure that you spread our podcast love. Let the folks out there that listen to this, make sure that they're hearing these words that are coming across. And other than that, man, I just want to sign out from the Hilltop Glove podcast. Stay safe out there. Be good to those folks around you. Blessings and peace.
That's it for today's episode of the Hilltop Glove podcast. Make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and other platforms. Also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Hilltop Glove.